The dusty road stretched endlessly through Nevada's harsh terrain, and Clara Whitehorse adjusted the worn shawl around her shoulders as the wagon lurched over another rut. Her two daughters, 8-year-old Maria and 6-year-old Sophie, huddled beside her, their dark eyes wide with uncertainty as they gazed at the unfamiliar landscape. The letter in Clara's pocket, creased from countless readings, promised work and shelter at Silver Creek Ranch, though she knew nothing was guaranteed. Her grandmother's medicine pouch, hanging from her neck beneath her dress, felt heavy with both hope and the weight of ancient Cherokee wisdom. The city clinic where she'd worked as a veterinary assistant was now just a memory, closed due to budget cuts that had left her with 2 children and nowhere to turn. Silver Creek Ranch emerged from the valley like a mirage, its weathered buildings scattered across acres of brown grass and rocky outcroppings. Clara counted at least 30 horses in the distant corrals, their sleek coats gleaming in the afternoon sun, and she felt her heart quicken with recognition of the quarter horses her grandfather had spoken of with such reverence. The main house stood solid and imposing, its wraparound porch shadowed by cottonwood trees that whispered of precious water in this dry land. Her daughters pressed closer to her as the wagon approached, their small hands finding hers as they sensed the magnitude of this moment. Everything they had left in the world now fit in 3 worn carpets, and their entire future depended on the kindness of strangers who knew nothing of Cherokee healing ways. Jackson Rivers stepped from the ranch house with the measured gait of a man who had learned not to hurry his judgments, his weathered face revealing nothing as he surveyed the travel-worn woman and her children. At 42, he had built Silver Creek into the finest quarter-horse operation in Nevada, through equal parts determination and heartbreak, and he'd learned that desperation often masked either salvation or ruin. His prize stallion, Thunder's Pride, had been his constant companion for 7 years, and now the magnificent animal lay in the barn, his breathing labored and his once bright eyes dulled by an illness that had already claimed 3 other horses. The telegram from the employment agency had mentioned a woman with veterinary experience, but he saw only another mouth to feed and 2 children who would require protection in a land that offered little mercy. Yet something in Clara's steady gaze reminded him of his late wife's quiet strength, the way she had faced every challenge with her chin raised and her hands steady. Before we continue, leave your like, share our story, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you. The scream that shattered the afternoon air sent ice through Clara's veins, and she leaped from the wagon without thought, her body moving with the instinctive response of someone who had spent years caring for suffering creatures. Through the open barn doors, she could see a magnificent black stallion thrashing in his stall, his coat slick with sweat and his eyes rolling white with pain and terror. Jack rushed past her, his face grim as he grabbed a lead rope. But Clara was already moving, her grandmother's voice echoing in her memory with words about reading the language of animal suffering. She reached the stall as Jack struggled to control the horse, and without hesitation, she began humming the ancient Cherokee healing song her grandmother had taught her, her voice low and steady as she approached the panicked animal. The stallion's ears flicked toward her, and for a moment, his thrashing ceased as if he recognized something in her tone that spoke to his deepest pain. Jack stared at her with a mixture of amazement and suspicion, and Clara knew that this moment would determine whether she and her daughters had found refuge or had merely delayed their inevitable departure. "I can heal horses, sir," Clara said quietly, her voice carrying the conviction of generations of Cherokee healers, even as her hands trembled with the weight of her boldness. The stallion had quieted under her presence, though his breathing remained harsh and labored, and she could see the telltale signs of the mysterious illness that had been devastating horses across the territory. Jack's eyes narrowed as he studied her, taking in her travel-worn dress, her mixed Cherokee and European features, and the quiet authority with which she had calmed his prized stallion. His ranch hands had gathered at the barn entrance, their faces skeptical as they watched this strange woman who dared to make such claims, and Clara felt the familiar sting of prejudice that had followed her throughout her life. "We need that," Jack replied finally, his voice rough with desperate hope and barely contained grief. And Clara knew that her words had been both a promise and a prayer that she might not be able to keep. The weight of her daughter's futures pressed against her shoulders as she realized that everything now depended on her ability to bridge the gap between her grandmother's ancient wisdom and the veterinary knowledge she had gained in the white man's world. The small cabin that Jack assigned to Clara and her daughters was hardly more than a one-room shelter with a crooked porch and a chimney that looked ready to collapse. but Clara saw only possibility in its weathered walls and dusty floors. Maria and Sophie explored their new home with the resilience of children who had learned to adapt quickly. Though Clara caught the worried glances they exchanged when they thought she wasn't looking, she unpacked her grandmother's medicine pouch with reverence, laying out the dried herbs and sacred stones on the cabin's single table, while her modern veterinary instruments found their place beside ancient healing tools. The dichotomy of her two worlds had never been more apparent. Yet she sensed that this place might finally offer the opportunity to unite them into something more powerful than either could be alone. As darkness fell over Silver Creek Ranch, Clara stood on her crooked porch and watched the lights flicker in the main house, knowing that tomorrow would bring the greatest test of her healing abilities and her determination to build a new life for her daughters. Dawn broke over the ranch with the harsh clarity of desert light, and Clara approached the barn with her medicine pouch in one hand and her veterinary bag in the other, feeling the weight of Jack's skeptical gaze upon her every step. Thunder's Pride lay in his stall, his magnificent frame reduced to labored breathing and trembling muscles, and Clara knelt beside him with the patience her grandmother had taught her, listening to his heart and lungs while her fingers traced the patterns of Cherokee healing along his neck. The other ranch hands watched from a respectful distance, their weathered faces revealing the desperate hope of men who had watched too many good horses die from this mysterious ailment. Jack stood in the doorway, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable, though Clara could sense the barely contained grief that threatened to overwhelm him every time he looked at his beloved stallion. She began to mix her grandmother's healing herbs with modern medicine, creating a treatment that had never been tried before, while her daughters watched from the barn entrance with wide eyes that held both pride and fear for their mother's bold attempt to save a life. This treatment could kill him faster than the disease, Jack said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of a man who had already lost too much to risk what little remained. Clara looked up from her careful preparation of the herbal mixture, meeting his eyes with the steady gaze that had sustained her through countless challenges, and she knew that this moment would define not only Thunder's Pride's fate, but her own. The fear in Jack's voice matched the terror in her own heart. But she also heard the underlying plea of a man who had run out of conventional options and was willing to trust in something he didn't understand. Her daughters stood behind her like small sentinels, their presence reminding her that this choice would echo through their lives as well, and Clara felt the familiar sensation of standing at the edge of a cliff with no choice but to leap. Sometimes healing requires risk, she replied, her voice carrying the conviction of her Cherokee ancestors who had trusted in the power of plant medicine long before white doctors had arrived on the continent. She administered the first dose of her hybrid treatment while Jack held Thunder's Pride's head, and both of them knew that there was no turning back from this path, whatever its destination might be. The hours that followed were a vigil of hope and terror, as Clara monitored Thunder's Pride's response to her unconventional treatment while Jack paced the barn like a caged wolf. Her daughters brought her water and cold biscuits, their small faces grave with the understanding that their mother was fighting a battle that would determine their place in this harsh new world. The stallion's breathing gradually steadied, though fever still burned through his magnificent frame, and Clara found herself alternating between Cherokee healing songs and careful veterinary observation, two traditions that had never been united in quite this way. Jack's ranch hands took turns checking on the treatment's progress, their initial skepticism slowly giving way to cautious hope as they witnessed Clara's gentle but authoritative care. As the sun reached its zenith, Thunder's Pride opened his eyes fully for the first time in days, and Clara felt a rush of gratitude to her grandmother's spirit and her own hard-won veterinary knowledge, knowing that the first battle had been won but the war for the stallion's life was far from over. By evening, Thunder's Pride was standing on trembling legs, and the change in Jack Rivers was as dramatic as the improvement in his horse. The hardness around his eyes had softened into something that resembled wonder, and he watched Clara work with an attention that made her acutely aware of her every movement. She prepared the evening dose of her herbal medicine with the precision her grandmother had demanded, while Maria and Sophie sat quietly in the corner of the stall, their dark eyes bright with the pride of daughters who were witnessing their mother's greatest triumph. The other horses in the barn seemed calmer as well, as if they sensed that the shadow of death had lifted slightly from their sanctuary, and Clara allowed herself to hope that her healing methods might save more than just one precious stallion. Jack helped her apply the evening poultices to Thunder's Pride's legs, and their hands brushed as they worked, sending an unexpected warmth through Clara that had nothing to do with Cherokee healing arts or veterinary science. For the first time since arriving at Silver Creek Ranch, Clara began to believe that she and her daughters might have found more than just shelter. They might have found a home. The ranch hands, who had watched Clara's work with skeptical eyes, now approached her with the awkward respect of men who had witnessed something beyond their understanding, and she found herself fielding questions about other horses that had been showing signs of illness. Word of Thunder's Pride's improvements spread beyond Silver Creek Ranch with the speed of desert wind, and by week's end, neighboring ranchers were arriving to seek Clara's opinion on their own ailing horses. Her daughters adapted to ranch life with the quick grace of children, learning to gather eggs from the chickens and to help with small chores that made them feel useful rather than burdensome. Jack began joining Clara for her evening treatments of Thunder's Pride, and their conversations gradually expanded beyond horse medicine to include stories of their past lives and carefully unspoken hopes for the future. Clara felt the first stirrings of something she had thought dead since her husband's departure, the possibility that she might be valued not just for her healing skills, but for the woman she was becoming, in this place where Cherokee wisdom and frontier pragmatism could coexist. 3 weeks after her arrival at Silver Creek Ranch, Clara realized that she had crossed an invisible threshold, from visitor to resident, from desperate seeker to valued member of a community she was helping to heal. Thunder's Pride was now strong enough to be turned out in the small paddock near the barn, and his recovery had become the talk of the territory, bringing a steady stream of horse owners seeking Clara's unique blend of traditional and modern healing. Her daughters had claimed their place among the ranch children, learning to ride on gentle mares and to help with the daily tasks that kept Silver Creek functioning, their laughter echoing across the yard in ways that made Clara's heart ache with gratitude. Jack had begun consulting her on all matters related to the horse's health, and she had established a small treatment area in the barn where she could properly combine her Cherokee healing methods with her veterinary training. The cabin that had seemed so humble upon their arrival now felt like home, its crooked porch decorated with wildflowers Maria and Sophie had gathered, and Clara knew that she had successfully entered the special world where her two healing traditions could work together to create something entirely new. The success with Thunder's Pride opened doors throughout the territory, and Clara found herself traveling to neighboring ranches with her daughters in tow, her reputation as a horse healer spreading faster than she had ever imagined possible. Each case presented new challenges that required her to deepen her understanding of both Cherokee plant medicine and veterinary science, and she began keeping detailed notes on which treatments worked best for different conditions. Jack insisted on accompanying them on the longer journeys, ostensibly to provide protection, but Clara suspected also to learn more about her healing methods and perhaps to spend more time in her company. Her daughters thrived on these adventures, becoming skilled at gathering healing herbs and learning to read the signs of illness in horses with an intuition that reminded Clara of her own childhood. Training with her grandmother, the bond between Clara and Jack grew stronger with each shared experience, built on mutual respect for each other's knowledge and a growing trust that neither had expected to find in their carefully guarded hearts. Maria and Sophie had become fixtures around the Silver Creek barn, their small hands surprisingly gentle and capable as they helped Clara prepare herbal treatments and monitor recovering horses. Clara watched with wonder as her daughters absorbed both Cherokee healing traditions and practical ranch skills, bridging two worlds with the unconscious ease that only children could manage. Jack began teaching the girls to ride on his quietest mares, and Clara found herself holding her breath as she watched her daughters learn to communicate with horses in ways that reminded her of her own Cherokee grandmother's teachings about animal spirits. The ranch hands, initially wary of having children underfoot, had come to appreciate Maria and Sophie's help and their uncanny ability to sense when a horse was in distress. Clara felt her heart expanding as she realized that her daughters were not just surviving in this new environment, but actually flourishing, developing skills and confidence that their city life had never offered them. The autumn roundup brought new challenges as Clara was called upon to examine dozens of horses for signs of the mysterious illness that continued to plague ranches throughout Nevada. Her treatment methods had evolved into a sophisticated system that combined Cherokee plant medicine with modern veterinary techniques, and she had begun training other ranchers' wives in basic horse care using her hybrid approach. Jack watched her work with undisguised admiration, and Clara found herself falling in love not just with him but with the life they were building together at Silver Creek Ranch. Her daughters had become accomplished riders, their natural athleticism and Cherokee intuition making them fearless on horseback in ways that both thrilled and terrified their mother. The respect Clara had earned from the ranching community was evident in the deference with which they sought her advice, and she began to understand that she had found her calling in this harsh but honest land where healing was valued above social conventions. Winter's approach brought new urgencies as Clara worked to prepare enough herbal medicines to last through the harsh Nevada cold, while taught her daughters the essential skills of ranch survival that would keep them safe during the dangerous months ahead. The bond between Clara and Jack had deepened into something that felt both inevitable and miraculous, built on shared respect for each other's knowledge and a growing love that encompassed not just them but the entire life they were creating together. Maria and Sophie had claimed their place as valued members of the Silver Creek family, their Cherokee heritage providing them with unique insights into animal behavior that complemented Jack's lifetime of ranching experience. Clara found herself working longer hours as demand for her services increased, and she began to worry that she was spreading herself too thin in her determination to help every horse owner who sought her assistance. The mysterious illness continued to appear sporadically throughout the territory, and Clara knew that her reputation as a healer would ultimately depend on her the ability to find a permanent solution to this devastating plague. The first major blizzard of winter trapped the Silver Creek community for nearly a week, and Clara used the enforced isolation to teach Jack more about Cherokee healing philosophy, while he shared his deep knowledge of horse breeding and ranch management. Her daughters spent the long evenings learning traditional Cherokee stories from their mother while mastering practical skills like mending harnesses and caring for barn cats, their education becoming a unique blend of ancient wisdom and frontier pragmatism. Clara found herself falling deeper in love with Jack as she watched him interact with Maria and Sophie, his natural gentleness with children, complementing his strength and competence in all matters related to ranch life. The horses weathered the storm well under Clara's watchful care, and she used the quiet time to experiment with new herbal combinations that might provide even better protection against the mysterious illness. When the storm finally broke and the sun returned to Silver Creek Ranch, Clara realized that she had never felt more at home anywhere in her life, surrounded by people who valued both her Cherokee heritage and her veterinary skills. Spring returned to Nevada, with the sudden violence of desert weather, bringing both hope and new challenges as Clara's reputation as a horse healer drew visitors from as far away as California and Colorado. Her daughters had grown taller and stronger during the winter months, their riding skills now rivaling those of children who had been born on ranches, and Clara felt a fierce pride in their adaptation to this demanding life. Jack had begun discussing marriage in the careful way of a man who had learned not to assume anything about a woman's feelings, and Clara found herself imagining a future where her healing practice could be permanently rooted at Silver Creek Ranch. The emotional commitment she felt to both Jack and the land surprised her with its depth, making her understand that healing others had somehow healed the broken places in her own heart. When Thunder's Pride produced his first healthy foal since recovering from the mysterious illness, Clara knew that her hybrid healing methods had achieved something that neither Cherokee medicine nor conventional veterinary science could have accomplished alone. The spring also brought disturbing news of new outbreaks of the horse illness in distant counties, and Clara found herself torn between her growing responsibilities at Silver Creek Ranch and her sense of duty to help suffering animals wherever they might be. Her daughters had become her capable assistants, able to prepare basic herbal remedies and to recognize the early signs of illness in horses. Their Cherokee intuition sharpened by months of practical experience, Jack supported her desire to help other ranchers, but worried about the toll that constant traveling was taking on both Clara and the girls. And their discussions about the future became more urgent as they realized that her healing reputation was becoming both a blessing and a burden. Clara began training other women in her healing methods, hoping to establish a network of healers who could respond to outbreaks without requiring her personal attention. But she discovered that the combination of Cherokee plant medicine and veterinary science was not easily taught to those who lacked her unique background. The mysterious illness seemed to be evolving, becoming more virulent and affecting horses that had previously recovered. And Clara feared that her early successes might have given everyone false hope about her ability to control this devastating plague. The arrival of Dr. Harrison Blackwood from the Territorial Veterinary Service brought both validation and new challenges to Clara's healing practice. As the formerly trained doctor came to Silver Creek Ranch to investigate reports of miraculous horse recoveries, Clara approached the meeting with carefully controlled anxiety, knowing that Dr. Blackwood could either legitimize her work or destroy her reputation by dismissing her methods as primitive superstition. Jack stood firmly beside her as she demonstrated her hybrid healing techniques, and Clara felt strengthened by his unwavering support even as she faced the most important professional challenge of her life. Dr. Blackwood's initial skepticism gradually gave way to fascination as he observed the results of Clara's treatment methods, and his willingness to learn from her Cherokee healing knowledge surprised everyone at Silver Creek Ranch. The collaboration between Clara and Dr. Blackwood marked a new phase in her healing practice, lending scientific credibility to her work while allowing her to maintain the spiritual elements that her grandmother had insisted were essential to true healing. Clara's daughters had become local celebrities in their own right, their riding skills and horse sense earning them invitations to participate in neighboring ranches, roundups, and horse training sessions. Maria, now 9, had developed an almost mystical ability to calm frightened horses, while 6-year-old Sophie possessed an uncanny talent for spotting the early signs of illness that often escaped adult observation. Clara watched with wonder and pride as her daughters embodied the best of both their Cherokee heritage and their frontier upbringing, comfortable in both worlds in ways that Clara herself was still learning to achieve. Jack had formally proposed marriage during a moonlit ride across the mesa, and Clara had accepted with a joy that surprised her with its intensity, knowing that their union would create a permanent home for her daughters and a stable base for her expanding healing practice. The wedding plans brought the entire ranching community together in celebration, and Clara realized that she had not only found love but had also helped to build a network of relationships that would support both her healing work and her family's future. Summer brought new prosperity to Silver Creek Ranch as Clara's healing reputation attracted horse buyers from throughout the West, all eager to purchase animals from a ranch where the mysterious horse illness had been successfully conquered. Her treatment protocols had evolved into a sophisticated system that other veterinarians were beginning to study and adopt, though none could replicate her unique combination of Cherokee plant medicine and formal veterinary training. Maria and Sophie had become accomplished horsewomen, able to ride the most spirited mares with the fearless grace that reminded everyone of their Cherokee heritage, and their presence at the ranch had brought a liveliness that complemented Jack's steady leadership. Clara found herself documenting her healing methods in detailed journals, hoping to preserve her grandmother's knowledge while making it accessible to others who might need to combat similar illnesses in the future. The happiness she felt at Silver Creek Ranch was deeper and more complete than anything she had experienced in her previous life, built on the solid foundation of useful work, loving relationships, and the knowledge that she was honoring her Cherokee ancestors while contributing to her adopted community. The autumn horse sales brought visitors from as far away as Mexico and Canada, all drawn by reports of Clara's revolutionary healing methods and the exceptional health of Silver Creek Ranch's horses. Clara had established a formal training program for other healers, teaching carefully selected students to combine traditional plant medicine with modern veterinary techniques, though she remained cautious about sharing the most sacred aspects of Cherokee healing wisdom. Her daughters had claimed their places as valued members of the ranching community, their unique skills and perspectives earning them respect from adults who had initially viewed them with skeptical curiosity. Jack's pride in his wife-to-be and her daughters was evident in everything he did, from the careful way he introduced them to visiting dignitaries to his insistence that Clara's healing barn be built to the highest standards of both function and beauty. Clara felt the weight of responsibility for her expanding reputation, knowing that any failure on her part could undermine not only her own credibility but also the growing acceptance of Cherokee healing methods throughout the territory. The wedding of Clara Whitehorse and Jack Rivers became the social event of the season, bringing together ranchers, tribal leaders, veterinarians, and territorial officials in a celebration that honored both Cherokee traditions and frontier customs. Clara's daughters served as flower girls, their faces radiant with joy as they watched their mother marry the man who had become their loving father in all but blood, and their happiness completed Clara sensed that she had finally found the place where all parts of her identity could coexist peacefully. Dr. Blackwood served as Jack's best man, a gesture that symbolized the medical community's growing acceptance of Clara's healing methods and her integration into the professional circles that had once excluded her. The ceremony itself blended Cherokee blessing rituals with frontier wedding traditions, creating something new and beautiful that reflected the unique nature of the couple and the community they had built together. As Clara and Jack exchanged bows beneath the vast Nevada sky, surrounded by the people who had become their family, she knew that her journey from desperate single mother to respected healer had reached its perfect culmination. Happiness of Clara's new marriage was tested when a virulent new strain of the mysterious horse illness struck 3 ranches simultaneously, killing a dozen horses before Clara could even arrive to assess the situation. The severity of this outbreak exceeded anything she had previously encountered, and her usual combination of Cherokee plant medicine and veterinary techniques seemed powerless against this evolved version of the disease. Jack stood beside her as she worked desperately to save the remaining horses, but Clara could see the fear in his eyes as he realized that this threat could destroy not only their livelihood but also the reputation she had worked so hard to establish. Her daughters watched with solemn faces as their mother faced the first serious challenge to her healing abilities since their arrival at Silver Creek Ranch, and Clara felt the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her like a physical burden. The Territorial Veterinary Service sent additional doctors to assist with the crisis, but Clara knew that if her methods failed against this new strain, the credibility of Cherokee healing practices would be undermined throughout the region, potentially destroying the bridge she had worked so hard to build between traditional and modern medicine. Desperate to find a solution to the new strain of horse illness, Clara traveled deep into the Nevada mountains to seek guidance from her grandmother's spirit and to gather rare healing plants that grew only in the most remote locations. Jack insisted on accompanying her despite the danger, and their daughters remained at Silver Creek Ranch under the protection of the ranch hands while Clara embarked on this spiritual and practical quest. In the high mountain meadows, Clara fasted and prayed according to Cherokee tradition while searching for the sacred plants her grandmother had described in stories, but which Clara had never needed to use before. The mountain spirits seemed to answer her prayers when she discovered a grove of ancient trees whose bark contained the exact compounds she needed to combat the evolved illness, and she gathered the precious material with the reverence her grandmother had taught her to show for all healing gifts. Jack watched with fascination and respect as Clara performed the sacred rituals that transformed ordinary plant material into powerful medicine, and his understanding of her Cherokee heritage deepened as he witnessed the spiritual discipline that underlay all of her healing work. The new mountain medicine proved effective against the evolved strain of horse illness, but Clara's success came at a personal cost as she exhausted herself traveling from ranch to treat affected animals throughout the territory. Her daughters worried about their mother's health as they watched her work 18-hour days preparing medicine and treating horses, her Cherokee training sustaining her when her physical strength began to fail. Jack struggled to balance his support for Clara's healing mission with his concern for her well-being, and their marriage faced its first serious test as they disagreed about the limits of her responsibility to the ranching community. Dr. Blackwood and other veterinarians worked alongside Clara to implement her new treatment protocols, but none of them possessed her unique ability to combine plant preparation with the spiritual elements that seemed essential to the medicine's effectiveness. Clara found herself caught between her desire to help every suffering horse and her need to preserve her health and energy for her own family, a conflict that echoed the broader challenge of balancing her Cherokee identity with her responsibilities as a frontier wife and mother. Clara Whitehorse's healing journey began during the devastating winter of 1887, when Nevada faced both brutal weather and a deadly horse epidemic. With her daughters assisting and her husband Jack organizing a transport network, Clara's remedies reached far across the territory, earning her recognition as the region's foremost healer. By spring 1888, her protocols were widely adopted, ending the crisis and solidifying her reputation. Yet this honor also carried weight, as her success intertwined government policy with the future of Cherokee healing traditions. Her work deepened after meeting Rebecca Strong, a Cherokee medicine woman who expanded Clara's knowledge and urged her to balance community service with family well-being. Together they founded a training program, which evolved into the Silver Creek Institute for Equine Healing, drawing attention from across the West and even Europe. Clara's daughters matured into skilled healers themselves, embodying the fusion of Cherokee heritage and frontier life, while Jack grew into a steadfast partner and advocate. Despite new crises including a ranch-wide disease that forced Clara to adopt holistic ecosystem healing, her integration of tradition, science, and spirituality positioned Silver Creek as an international center of veterinary innovation. Over time, Clara's influence extended beyond horses to cultural preservation and sustainable ranching. Her methods were recognized by territorial governments, universities, and Cherokee communities, and her family carried her legacy forward through foundations, publications, and teaching. By the time of her peaceful death in 1902, Clara had transformed from a desperate single mother into a pioneer whose work reshaped veterinary medicine, preserved Cherokee healing traditions, and created a model of cooperation between indigenous knowledge and modern science that endured for generations.